Good evening, everybody. Part two of our doubleheader. Great first part with Flyer Up Florida. We had Rod Peterson on, and we were talking hockey. Tonight we go from the frozen pond to the diamond, and this is 108.6 Baseball Talk. Please be welcomed by a brand new guest who's going to be a part of the show a couple times a month. His name is Trent M. Clark, who's the author of a book called Leading Winning Teams. And if you go out there and look at the bottom, and he's a three-time World Series coach. Winners find a way, and he definitely displays those rings. Glad to have you on here, Trent.
Hey, thanks, Scott. I'm thrilled to join you, George, and of course the barber.
Yeah, we're gonna carve up some good information. And speaking of the barber, now that he's fresh off of his cruise, he wasted no time to cruise to this show tonight, right, Mark?
I was looking so forward to this. I'm sorry I couldn't join you earlier. I even went through all my hockey stuff to catch up because on my cruise, I kind of slid away from non-season in sport type of stuff. You know, I was just focused on baseball and football, but went and took a look at what was going on in hockey. And the wife was like, we have, and I'm like, okay, dear. I had to give her one of those. And but here I am. Here I am.
Well, just you watch that Fire Up Florida, which has become our designated hockey show. We use it for other stuff too, but right now it seems, since a lot of the topic ideas are drawn from Tampa and South Florida, that's why we have it under that particular name. So that's a show that's on the rise. George Eichhorn, long time no see. Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah, long time. We had a great show a little less than an hour ago, and now we're off to another great show with you guys. Good to see you, Trent, the barber, and of course Motor City Madmouth.
There you go. All right, well, you know what, Trent, this time we'll bring on somebody brand new. We're going to let you introduce yourself to everybody and what you're doing, and plus you and I have a lot of plans to do some stuff down the road, but we'll keep the focus on you right now and let everybody know what you're doing for yourself so they can get acquainted with you.
Thank you, guys. I am Trent Clark. I am the CEO of Leadershipity, a serial entrepreneur, done a ton of work with leadership and development for teams. We help companies double their EBITDA very fast, usually half the time. So we get excited about that work. I am an entrepreneur at heart, member of the Entrepreneurs Organization. I speak all over the world and have spoken in over 17 countries. So a great way for me to see between sports entrepreneurship. I've just been able to see the world. We do have a top 3% downloaded podcast called Winners Find a Way. And most people do know me because I spent over 13 years in professional baseball, coaching in 3 World Series, and recently authored Leading Winning Teams, book with Wiley Publishing, and super pumped. That is shipping in like a week from tomorrow, man. It's like go time, 8 days, and it's hitting the presses here.
So we have 3 authors on the show. We have you, George, and I. How about that? And Mark Faraday, one of these authors, I'll give him plenty to write about down the road, and we'll make it a clean sweep down the road. Right there, Mr. Barber, you got to get you, since you're an educator, you should have no problem with all this AI and all this business, put together a book with what you've done.
It'd be interesting because I have so many stories I could probably tell throughout the course of my life between encountering, professional athletes, being a coach myself, coaching high school sports, being a head football coach. I could probably bring so much to the table in a book that would be an interesting read, and I really should put that together.
Let me tell you, one of my best friends is called Google Docs. Okay, so since I wrote the last one on Google Docs, it even helps with the grammar and some of that other stuff. If I can use it, anybody can use it because, in the old Spanish thing, when I once dated a Puerto Rican, bad move, but you live and learn. The only thing I learned from her was El Stupido, because that's what it came down to with a lot of other stuff. So, but at any rate, Google Docs eliminates the El Stupido connotation. So, all right, well, let's talk baseball. This is interesting. The show's obviously titled MLB. Should MLB have a mercy rule? Let's go back to the Washington Nationals. Suffered their second biggest loss in franchise history, 17-0 at the hands of the Arizona Diamondbacks, who recorded their largest shutout victory in franchise history. The biggest Nationals loss was 18-0 to the San Francisco Giants. All right, Mr. Leadershipity. Okay, you've been around the game. inside as a coach. Now you have an opportunity to do a little analyzing. Should there be a mercy rule at one time? And the only reason why I ask is this, okay? What it does to pitching staffs and things like that, obviously, I mean, I've never seen anybody come from 12, 14, 15 runs, but pitching staff, we'll let you get the opening word on this one. Should there be a mercy rule in MLB?
Yeah, for me, absolutely not, Scott. You got to own your trash. Like when you have a bad day, you have a bad day, and that's how it is. I mean, it's amazing the Diamondbacks are putting up more points than the Cardinals, right? Like 2 touchdowns and a field goal. And it's crazy out there that the Diamondbacks are just an offensive powerhouse, and they're a good hitting team. I'm surprised with the Nationals. They've been pretty solid in pitching in the past, and obviously they're struggling a little bit. But, that's the beautiful thing of it. I can think back I think it was the 95 World Series game 1. I think we got beat like 13-1. You got to wear that and just come back the next night and get at it. We won the next day. And it's part of the game. It also makes for some great fodder, right? There's nothing better than a regular season game to see some, utility guy go into pitch in the 8th inning and just throw the ball 53 miles an hour to what he can. You get a whole appreciation for how talented these pitchers are when you see another major leaguer who can't pump it up there over 75, and he can still get people out. So I think it creates a lot of fun, but I do think you have to own and be responsible for, hey, how it goes. And if you're going to give up 17, you got to wear it.
Fair enough. Okay, George.
Yeah, 17 and God, unbelievable. Yeah, this was back a week or two ago. I looked at it and I says, no, this can't be right. Well, we all know it is right. And I do agree. I don't think that we should have a limit on any kind of running up the score kind of thing in baseball. Now, Major League Baseball is too much of a tradition that, you play the 9 innings and you play the whole game unless there's some sort of weather condition or something like that. So I just think that Washington, again, they're suffering from lack of excitement in the nation's capital. I mean, they really, really have had a tough row last several years, but boy, oh boy, when you lose something like that, Corbin, I'm looking at the box score. He dropped a 2-11, gave up in 3 innings. He gave up 13 hits, 11 runs, 10 of which were earned. No walks, though. I'm surprised. No walks, 3 strikeouts and 1 home run. But all kidding aside, I mean, 19,758 people saw that down in Arizona, and I bet a lot more other people said they saw it when they're telling stories around their friends. It was an incredible game, Scott, 17-0. But no, I'm not in for any kind of mercy rule or stoppage or anything like that. Let the big boys play, and you got to settle it on the diamond.
All right. Well, Candy Evelyn gives you a Detroit reference, so I'll let you go ahead and read it since it didn't come from you.
One of the biggest comebacks, 13 runs on June 18th, 1911. The Tigers came back from a 13-1 deficit to beat the Chicago White Sox 16-5. Candy,
15.
you never fail to amaze me with your statistics. That's a really good one. Thanks for sharing.
16-15.
Wow.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
That's
all right. Well, that's okay. Hey, listen, these things are interesting, when you can come up with them. You talk about mercy rules, pitching stats, and all that. I mean, when you look at all the different rule changes designed to limit the stress, you have that ghost runner, which I hate it. I really, really do. But it's there and it's not going away. Thankfully, it does go away in the postseason. But, Mark, you're
These
the
are
last
not
one
little
here.
league kids. These are not little league kids. These are not high school kids. These are not college kids. These are professional athletes, and there should be absolutely no mercy rule for them. If you don't want to get your ass beaten to the ground like that, then come prepared to play every day. That's the bottom line. I'm not sure what's happening down in Washington. I live close to there. I know that they talked about selling the farm there when they were going to change ownership, and then something went back on that, and it's the same ownership, but they're not growing some of that talent that they had there. They just brought James Woods up. I believe Dylan Cruz is at AAA now. I think the anticipation was that Cruz was going to be in the major leagues by now. I really do believe that, but he's not. On the other side of the coin, my Pirates, who I watch and dread watching, but I still watch, had just got done playing Arizona like 6 of their last, I don't know, 12 games or something along that lines. And I'm really shocked at what a good team Arizona is. Arizona, fellas, reminds me of the St. Louis Cardinals from a few years ago when they would just quietly come into the ballpark, hit it, get some timely pitching, and play really good baseball. And I'm not impressed with them as much as you would think I would be. I'm impressed with the fact that they are able to do it night in and night out. Not as a team, but I'm impressed the fact that they do this night in and night out. So no mercy rule. No mercy.
Well, my thoughts are is if you go ahead and score a lot of runs, will you have any left for the next game? And in a lot of cases, many of them don't. So it's like a home run derby. What do you got left by the end of it? All right, now Candy Eveling likes to go out there and throw herself under the bus. So at my team's expense, 9th inning on April 25th, 1901. Boy, you're really going back. Even before my grandparents were born, the Tigers, that is 1901. Okay. The Tigers came back from a 13-4 deficit in the bottom of the ninth to beat the Milwaukee Brewers 14-13. Doc Casey, a third baseman, and Dennis led the comeback. Did the Milwaukee Brewers exist in 1901?
No, they weren't called the Brewers. No.
I don't know what they were called. All right, so
Yeah.
So all right, well, whatever the case is,
Milwaukee Braves, maybe.
yeah, I don't know. She's our crack statistician. She'll go ahead and do it. So, but regardless of that, I think it's a fun topic to bring up anyways, because let's face the reality. It won't happen. We know it won't. But when it comes to everybody's trying to do so much to protect pitching staffs, and then you kind of wonder whether or not they might even consider this. But let's face reality. That to me is nothing more than just pure speculation of something that won't happen. But hey, you know what? Why not examine it on this level? I figure if you're going to get your tail kicked anyways, will you have any runs to win the next game? And how many times, especially during the doubleheader or the day after, and how many times does the other team come back and win? Probably quite a bit anyway, but certainly worth evaluating. So now let's go ahead. And I know that Trent can relate to this guy. Okay, Candy, I think we're pretty good over there. So they look back at the man who turned from a flamethrower into a finesse pitcher, Frank Tanana. His career mark was 240 and 236. The teams he played for were 1,738 wins, 1925 losses, and even one tie. My goodness, yes, a tie. So, Trent, I think you probably got to know Frank Tanana a bit in Detroit. So I'll give you first dibs on this one as well.
Well, I tell you, Frank is like one of the best. I mean, this guy is through and through just a great heart, unbelievable ambassador of the game. He has a straight passion for baseball, certainly played as long as he could. And it was great for me. I came in and coached him in 1993 and 1994 with the Tigers. He was a guy, I think he was like our fourth or fifth starter at that time. Right. And I think they were thinking about thumbing him into like maybe some setup situations and things from the left side. And I grew up watching the Texas Ranger, Frank Tanana, the flamethrower. So very different guy that was now kind of tail end of his career. But he was so good to me. I'm a 23-year-old kid coaching in the major leagues and minor leagues and kind of figure out this whole thing with the Tigers organization. And Frank was great to me, man. It was incredible guy and just gleaned a lot from him. At that point he was probably 16, 17-year veteran. So and surprisingly, I'm actually shocked by that loss record, because I felt like Frank Tanana was always winning. And so it tells you the longevity of the game for a guy who's got close to 38 decisions. Is that right?
Well, think about it. He's won 240 games and lost 236. But the thing is, if he were on better teams, that win total would have been 275, 300 when you really look at it. You have a guy playing on bad teams and still amasses 240 wins.
Yeah. He was I think a fabulous guy, man. Like, what did you guys think of Frank Tanana?
All right, look at this guy. He's already getting ready for the co-host role. All right, go ahead, George. Answer Trent's question.
Yeah, well, obviously being from Detroit, I mean, we were blessed to see him. He was raised in Northwest Detroit and, was the first round pick of the California Angels. 71 years old right now. I tell you what, he looks great. I get the chance to see him once or twice a year because he's in the Polish American Sports Hall of Fame and the Michigan Sports Hall of Fame. So in the last couple of years, he's brought his mom to the Polish Sports Hall of Fame dinner in Troy, and I was able to see him again and exchange a few words, pleasantries, if you will. Frank's a great guy. I echo what you said. There's no question about it. This guy went from a flamethrower to being more finesse in the bullpen. He readjusted his whole repertoire in his career, and it took off from there. And yeah, of course, that win-loss record is going to be deceiving because a lot of those games he pitched in relief too, and suffered the loss. Fair and square. Your record is usually your best 500 or a little below if you're a relief pitcher, through the years, your career. But that being said, he had some great qualities going for him. He's always admired. I know he's a very religious, very spiritual man too. And he just loves baseball. It's great. And now that he makes his home in Detroit full time, it's like I said, it's a blessing for me to be able to see him a couple times, 2-3 times a year. He's a great guy.
Okay, Mark.
I think it's pretty interesting how he changed his game throughout the course of his career,
Right.
Because not every pitcher can do that, especially in today's baseball. Those guys are flamethrowers. They're flamethrowers till they burn out, and that's it. They're done. You might get 7-8 years out of. Look at Strasburg. How many years did he actually pitch in the league? But Tanana hung around forever, and he was a name that I will always remember as a kid because of the fact that he was able to transition from being one of those guys who could bring it to a guy who actually was able to finesse his way through. And he always seemed like the kind of guy who would take people under his wing and kind of give them guidance. Not only be a nice guy when you saw him in public as a PR, as a reporter, as a PR guy, whatever, but he always seemed like the kind of guy who would give tips to the young guys coming up because he wanted to see them succeed too. And I think that's a feather in his cap to hear that about him. But I really believe that if you can make that, it's too bad he can't teach guys how to be able to transition throughout the course of their career, being able to throw the ball in different ways to elongate their career.
Yeah, great points all the way around, Mark. I mean, when you think about starters that went to relievers, one guy that comes to mind, or two actually, are Dennis Eckersley and John Smoltz. But the thing I loved about Frank Tanana is it wasn't that he went from a reliever to a starter. The fact of the matter is he's throwing a hard 90 to 100 miles an hour and realized, hey, my arm is going to last. So he was bold enough to change midstream. In fact, I even admire guys that actually go out there and decide to go, well, you know what, if I can't hit, why don't I become a pitcher? And they have an opportunity to do that. So I am intrigued by both scenarios. But yeah, again, the man's still 4 games over 500, and he's done an awful lot. I guess that would beg the question, I'm surprised Tommy John isn't in the Hall of Fame. I don't know if he is or not, but he should be as a builder of the game because of the surgery, but we'll do that another day. But it just kind of reminds you a little bit of changes of the game. I want to go back to the first topic for a moment, though. The Arizona Diamondbacks made a couple good deals at the trade deadline at the expense of the Miami Marlins, and they added A.J. Puck, and they also added Josh Bell. I saw Josh Bell's final game over at American Family Field out in Milwaukee in a Brewers 6-2 win. So, they added a good quality pitcher on the back end, and then they get Bell. I hear he's doing well. Then again, when they leave Miami, like Jazz Chisholm did, you're surrounded by better players, and your average and your numbers are going to go up. So I think the addition of Puck and Bell are certainly going to help the Diamondbacks. We get back to Tanana. you know what? I wanted to bring him up here. I felt there were enough people on this panel old enough to appreciate his efforts. And I'm glad that we were able to give Frank a little bit of recognition. But that said, Candy, take a steak break. You want, well, Trent, you want to say something first?
Yeah, I'd say one thing, and I want to kind of read or kind of jump on what Barber said, man. I'd like to know, man, like, when you think about some of the guys, especially like David Wells, who was a young guy for us in Detroit, and having a guy like Frank Tanana, a fellow left-handed guy. I mean, my guess is that was really impactful for Boomer Wells to play with a guy like that young in his career, who really taught him how to pitch. And now you look forward to his perfect game with the Yankees and some of the things that David did down his career. I got to think there's a little bit of an assist there for Frank Tanana somewhere along the line, because he worked with a lot of the young guys, a young Mike Moore. There was a lot of guys on that staff there. I look back on that Tigers team in 93, 94 going, man, maybe we should have won more. We had some pretty good names, but it was obviously a strike shortened year. So we were kind of struggling around that 500 number, but yeah, I think Frank definitely gets a couple assists along there.
Scott, can I just comment on that? Trent, I often say this. I say this about, as a teacher, I say this to my students. You learn better from your peers than you would ever learn from me. And I think guys learn better from players, their colleagues that they work with, than they learn from coaches. And that just, it's just a feather in the cap if you're that kind of person who can step in and recognize that and be able to do that.
Yeah, but why wouldn't you be able to learn from your colleagues or players? Because after all, they're in the battle with you, is what they are. Although you have a lot of great coaches as well, but if you can learn from a guy in your clubhouse that's on the field every so many days of the year, Mark, you bring up a valid point. Now Candy gets her station break. Go ahead, Candy.
You are listening to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. We actually published a book last year. It's called Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is written by none other than Scott, the Motor City Madmouth Morganroth. And the foreword was written by none other than George Eichhorn. It talks about Scott's 40 plus years in the media industry and how it has changed. Lots of stories, lots of names. Go check it out. There's actually a picture of a young Scott with a young Muhammad Ali. Go get the book. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Apple, or Google. If you like to listen to podcasts, you can catch us wherever you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, Google, Apple, Spotify, CastBox, Deezer, you name it, we're there. We have a website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where numerous people write. We have a link to Scott's book. We also have a link to our online store. Go out and get some South Florida Tribune or Motor City Madmouth merchandise. You need a new baseball cap or a new sweatshirt. Or, Mark, you might need a new tank top. Go to our store. You might. Go get one of ours. Also, if you see that red subscribe button, means you haven't subscribed yet. Don't know why, but you can change that today. Click it, like us, share us. On Monday nights, we talk hockey and then we talk baseball. Tuesday nights, we talk football. Wednesday nights on Sports Exchange. And Thursday nights is Fire Up. And you never know what we're talking on either of those. So tune in to find out what we're talking about this week. Scott has a show on nofilter.net. It's a one-on-one interview show, the Motor City Madmouth Show. Check it out. Done with the station break, back to programming.
Yeah, and I should point out Trent Clark and I are going to be leading our efforts to grow the No Filter brand as well. So that's one of the things that we're going to be working on. Make that note. Hey, Mark, if you don't find a tank top, you can still get a golf shirt, and it's no big deal. And if you want to get a hat, you can do that too. Just kidding.
I appreciate it.
Come on, it's all fun. All right, well, you know what? This is baseball, folks. 108, this is baseball talk. But you want to know what happened on June 26th? Danny Jansen starts at catcher for the Toronto Blue Jays against the Boston Red Sox. But here's the situation. The game is suspended in the second inning due to rain. Well, we'll dial the clock forward to August 26th. The game will resume with the potential for Jansen playing for Boston. He could become the first player in MLB history to appear in a game for both teams. All right, we're going to start off with George on this one.
That is incredible, Scott. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
it's a great bit of baseball trivia, and we know how many people enjoy coming up with trivia, obviously, and all us
Well, I
baseball
like coming up
followers.
with I love coming
It's
up with these things that you're not going to hear
yeah,
from anybody else.
yeah,
Continue on.
yeah, and those things happen. I mean, once in a while, you have to pay. You got to make up the games later in the season when the two teams meet again, etc. But it doesn't happen that often, and yeah, to be able to do that and perhaps get revenge on your former team or whatever, it sounds like a really exciting opportunity for him. I really think that's going to be a lot of fun. We'll see how it goes, but yeah, that is certainly an oddity, not only in baseball, any sport, I guess you could say, but especially baseball, because they're resuming the game, like you mentioned. They're resuming it at the point of the suspension. So yeah, it sounds like fun. I'll be looking forward to that one.
Well, the amazing part about the whole thing is, and I know I'm going to go to my other crew members, it's one thing to play any other position, but when you're playing catcher, then you go out there and you're looking at pitching staff. Well, ... Mark, take over.
I think it's going to be interesting to see how he approaches that game, to be quite honest with you.
Right.
I would definitely be like, you got to put me in. I got to play this game. Oftentimes when you acquire a guy like that, you're going to dig into his brain a little bit and find out exactly what they're doing on the other side. You cannot change that much for one team, when you're going to play them. And I'm excited too, George. I hope he does get to play. I hope he starts. It'll be interesting to see how the fans accept him. It'll be interesting to see basically how he responds to his former team being part of that game, yet being on the other side. So I'm curious to see how that plays itself out.
Okay, Trent, give me your championship perspective on this oddity.
Well, I'm excited about the box score, right? Because I want to see this guy in the box score that he got a single in the first for the Blue Jays, and then he's got 2 hits later in the game for the Red Sox. I mean, the box score could be the best trivia of all time of what he did for this. And back, I mean, both these guys, great points. It's unique. I think the one I do remember is I believe there's a couple guys who have been traded in the middle of a doubleheader and went across and had to play the second game for the other team, right? I think that's happened on a couple occasions, I believe.
Wow.
And so this is but mid-game, this is just one of those things like I'll tell you, you watch. My guess is that someday that box score is going to be sold for $100,000 or something, right? Because someone's going to see that and get that, program or something and going, man, this is a pretty once in a lifetime kind of thing.
Well, if you ever do get a newspaper, regardless of how big or little they are, I would go ahead and clip that out and laminate it, because for all of us that have man caves and sports rooms, it wouldn't be a bad thing to laminate something that unique. And I'm glad that you brought a box score. I really am. But that's one thing, when I can find something really different like this, and I know I have a panel that can handle it. This is what baseball has some of the most weird things that you ever see when you attend a game. Oh, I've never seen this happen before. How many times have people ever said, I've never seen this happen before in baseball? Hockey, basketball, football. But baseball is one of those sports where, there's so much strategy and such a chess match involved. The word "never seen this before" should be considered a cliche when it comes to the great American pastime. And I'm glad that we were able to put it in tonight, because when I looked at it, I said, wow.
And the guy gets to become an answer on a Trivial Pursuit or it's one of the big games somewhere down the road. Like in 30 years, our grandkids are going to be going, hey, Grandpa, who's this guy who played in 2 games for 2 different teams? And you're going to be like, oh, hey, that's my good friend over here from the Blue Jays and the Red Sox.
It's not all you're giving it. Wait a minute. Hold it. I get my one rant a night, and now it's at your expense since you're the new kid on the block.
Hit it.
All right, here's the deal. You say Trivial Pursuit. Are you crazy? It should be on Jeopardy.
Jeopardy.
There you go.
Nice.
Should be
Nice.
on Jeopardy. Don't sell
For
Trivial
1,000,
Pursuit.
Alex. For 1,000.
Okay, well, that's fine. Yeah, well, put me in the class of Alex Trebek. Sorry. And he's a lot more tamer than I am. Of course, now he's really tame, but that's beside the point. I couldn't help that. But
Flag
the
on the
reality
play.
yeah, I know. The bottom line is it should be on Jeopardy. And what's this guy's name? Ken? What is it?
Ken Jennings.
That
Ken
is
Jennings.
Ken Jennings. Nice
Ken
call,
Jennings.
George.
For $1,000, who's the only player to play on both teams in the same box score? Trent M. Clark. We're calling on you for $1,000. Who is it?
I still can't name the guy's name. I don't know the
You
guy's
mean to
name.
tell
I've
me
never heard of
after-
this catcher. Jansen?
Danny
Yeah,
Jansen?
what's his first name?
Danny.
Huh? Well, no, I asked him, not you.
Thank you for the assist. The barber with an assist. Danny Jansen. That's who it is.
There you go. Yeah, well, of course, you got it because he gave it to you. But and all of a sudden, 108 inches baseball is turning into Jeopardy. But no, I have no plan on auditioning for that. It's okay. I got enough to deal with. All right. Well, we're going to go from a Jansen to a burger. All right. I don't even know where I come up with an analogy like that. But this one, Marlins Jake Burger has homered 12 times since the All-Star break. One of the few players who wasn't traded at the deadline. Of course, in Miami, they call it a fire sale. And he's home. And now recently, homered in his third straight game. The San Diego Padres took 2 of 3 from Miami this weekend, and former Marlin Luis Arraez went 7 for 15 in this series. The Padres have won 16 of 19 games. So I know I gave you a lot here. I know Burger. I was talking to Skip Schumacher, and he loved Burger. And he's probably glad he's the one that didn't get traded because you could build around a guy like this. And for a while, we didn't know if his name was going to be. But the real question I'm going to present to every one of you guys is, are the San Diego Padres for real? And again, they benefited from the Marlins as well. Ryan Hoeing got traded there, and Tanner Scott, they got the closer, and they were piling up an awful lot of players. And of course, Luis Arraez went there earlier from Miami. So, Trent, we'll go back to you. Obviously, you're not lacking baseball knowledge. How far can the Padres go?
Well, listen, I think the Padres proved 2 years ago that they could go as far as possible. I mean, I think they are a World Series contender right now. And, but the only issue is it doesn't matter if you're a contender in mid-August. You need to be a contender in October, right? But right now, they have proved themselves coming out of the break 13-3 in their 16 games since the All-Star break. Like you said, 16, what did you say? I think 16-6 since the last 22. I mean, that is crazy. That's good stuff. Big shout out to Burger. I mean, so if there's 16, 17 games and this guy's hit 13, I mean, that is hot. I mean, that is sizzling. And in a team, like you say, Motor City, like these guys have traded everybody. I don't know. This guy's going to look like my boy Bonds here. And he's going to get the 4 pretty soon. And they're going to walk him 4 times in a game. And he's going to stop getting to swing it.
Let me tell you something about Burger. I saw this guy go ahead, I think, strike out 4 or 5 times in one game. But then he began to work his way out of it. Jake said, I haven't had a chance to talk to him as much as because obviously nowadays it's harder to get players because of all the restrictions. And I'm not blaming the Marlins, just the way baseball has become in terms of some players who want to talk to the media and so forth. But the reality is Burger right now, to me, could be a cornerstone player for this Marlins team. And I'll tell you, they got another guy on there named Xavier Edwards. I got to tell you a funny story that occurred on Saturday night, though. I'm talking to Skip Schumacher and say, by the way, Skip, I want to talk about Xavier Edwards. I said, the last time I saw him was in Milwaukee when he got a cycle. And Schumacher says, glad to have you back. I mean, and then what do you think he ends up doing that night? Got 10 total bases. He got a bunch of walks. He got a hit and all that stuff. So, I mean, how many times have you ever heard a manager, you bring up a cycle, and say, glad to have you back, and all of a sudden this guy's on base 5 times. That's too surreal. That's just one of those types of things. So I'm happy for Jake. And obviously I think judging by what I heard from Skip Schumacher the other day, I think he's relieved at least he's still on the roster and he's finding his power stroke too. But one of the reasons that he is because he's hitting second in the batting order. And who's in front of him? Xavier Edwards. So when you got a speedster and then you got a guy who can hit it deep, had to get my deep out there, then, you know, good things are there. So I'm glad you brought that up there too, how you were able to mention Berger. All right, George, some thoughts about the Padres and now a little bit about the Marlins, particularly Berger.
Well, Padres, yeah. I mean, they've been loading up for the last several years. I mean, a lot of people expected them last season to give LA a run for their money. They've had some difficulties there winning, but now they're just on fire. Like you said, they're just steamrolling right now. Incredible. The best team, like you said, Trent, since the All-Star break, the best record in baseball. You know, I always got a spot in my heart here with them because obviously the Tigers took care of them in 1984. Dick Williams versus Sparky Anderson in the series, 4-1. Detroit won. San Diego's only been to the series once, I think, since '84. They really do deserve a winner. Those fans have been very loyal there. And think about it. They lost their football team. They don't have a pro NBA team. They don't have a pro hockey team, or at least Major League, I mean. And that's the only game in town if you're a San Diego sports fan, besides, obviously, the collegiate sports and San Diego State. But that being said, yeah, I think that San Diego is for real. I think that they do have a good shot to contend, maybe not for the division, but at least a wild card berth. And then the other thing about Berger, yeah, I tell you what, you know, he sounds like he's a good guy. You've talked to him, Scott. Like you said, you've followed him a little bit more than I have. But no, I think he brings a lot to the Marlins thing. I really do. I think that's a good move for them. And I really think that he's found maybe a better place to play. Chicago, very sad situation there with the White Sox. You feel for all those guys playing, all those guys managing, all the employees, everybody. But I tell you what, he can hang his head high now. And not to say that Miami is obviously a whole lot better. When one loss, they are better. But I'm just saying it's a good change of scenery for Berger.
Well, the reality is this. I know we have different numbers to describe how the Padres are doing, but winning 16 of 19 is pretty strong, especially as you approach mid-August. And they were aggressive at the trade deadline. And to me, when you put those two things together, that only equals one word: dangerous. Okay, Mark.
As far as Berger goes, any guy that can come out of the All-Star break when teams have changed their players around, play some of the better teams in the league after the All-Star break, which most teams are better than what the Marlins have currently, and still hit 12 home runs. They're putting something together there with him. Like you said, a cornerstone, the kid in front of him. Now you got to find some other pieces of the puzzle that are going to make them grow unilaterally on that team. I think it's fantastic he's able to come in there and do that since the All-Star break. That wasn't that long ago, fellas. I mean, the All-Star game was not that long ago. What, 3 weeks? Maybe a month at the most. In terms of San Diego, I don't mean to bash them or anything, but they just came through Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh probably should have won 2 of the 3 games against them, but they're in such a total collapse there that San Diego ended up winning the series. I believe they swept them at the end of the day, but they do have every possible guy on that team that could make them a championship caliber team. I love their pitching staff. They've got some good guys on that staff outside of Musgrove being like the number 3 for them. You still got Machado, who is lost in the shuffle at this point on that team. The Merrill kid, who plays in the outfield for them, he's a fantastic baseball player. He's been hitting the lights out of the ball. So I could easily see San Diego making a push. I don't know against the Dodgers, though. I think that's their kryptonite. That's my only thing. I think the Dodgers are their kryptonite.
Yeah, but don't forget Jake Cronenworth either. I'll tell you, this guy here has found himself a spot in San Diego. I've watched this guy. I mean, he didn't do bad in Denver, but I'll tell you what, you go to San Diego where there's no media pressure there. And right now, that they can't. I tell you one thing about the Padres, you can't fault them for trying. They've always been willing to spend money. That's just unfortunately some of these players that just hasn't clicked. So I'm not going to fault the Padres for being cheap because they're definitely not a cheap organization. And as for the Marlins, again, like I said, Jake Berger survived that fire sale, and now I have a gut feeling that if some of these younger players, let's face the reality, at the trade deadline, the Marlins did amass an awful lot of prospects. Now we just have to find out how long it'll take for a lot of these guys to come around. And, I even wrote in my story the other day that while they're having a tough year, no team, you like to think during spring training you're going to be optimistic. But how can you be optimistic when Sandy Alcantara is out right before the first pitch? Yuri Perez is one of your best young pitchers, and they're both gone. And then the list goes on in terms of how many pitchers are going down. Sandy Alcantara, you didn't have your Cy Young Award winner, and then you didn't even have Yuri Perez, who I think it was on his way to good things. So, and now I know that Skip Schumacher had a 3-year deal that was now chopped down to 2. So we'll get into that managerial situation another day. But I like San Diego, and if the Dodgers don't play their cards right, watch out for the Padres. All right. Well, you know what, Mark? You weren't on last week, but I decided to carry this topic over while you were here about trade deadline. So I want you to summarize the Pittsburgh Pirates, how they did at the trade deadline.
It doesn't really matter because they're not winning since the trade deadline. Look, a couple of pieces that they did do something with. There was rumor that they were going to move on from Aroldis Chapman, and they went out and got 2 left-handed relievers, and they're really not pitching those guys very much. Their bullpen is pretty abysmal currently. Bednar's giving up games. Holderman, I believe he gave up 8 runs in 3 innings, and then they put him on the DL. So that's the pitching part of it. They got no starters. They didn't even entertain. They did get rid of Martin Perez, who was abysmal. He was a pitch to contact kind of guy, and that's not what the Pirates need. They don't need a pitch to contact kind of guy. You got guys at the top of the pitching rotation in Skeens and Jared Jones and Mitch Keller who bring heat, and they have good benders. And why would you want to go to a pitch to contact guy after that? So moving him out is probably good, and it probably helps Martin Perez. He's not going to start for San Diego. He's going to be a middle relief guy when they need him. They got Brian De La Cruz from your Miami Marlins, and he has not done anything yet in Pittsburgh. He's just been pretty much invisible there.
But you know what, Mark? I do believe he will, though. I agree. I like Brian De La Cruz. Not only that, he's very signable for the Pirates, too. So I don't think you're going to have to worry about him asking you for some big-time money. But I think he'll be all right down the road. He has to acclimate to where he's at. But continue on.
One guy that they did pick up was Ian Kiner Falafella. I think I said that right. He's a super utility guy. He's kind of like Cronenworth. Those guys are super utility guys, and he brings to the Pirates what they really need, somebody they can plug in every day at a different spot, sit a guy out who might be struggling, or sit a guy out who needs a break. And I think he was an excellent acquisition, to be honest with you. I will say that the acquisitions that they did bring in have some longevity to them. They did not rent players, which is really good. They moved on from Quinn Priester, and they picked up a kid by the name of, I want to say his last name is Young, Nicky Young, I believe his last name is. He's playing at AAA for Indianapolis, smashing the ball down there. Quinn Priester was very hit or miss. I think he left Pittsburgh with around an 8 ERA. He was a number 1 draft pick a handful of years ago out of high school, and he never developed the way they had wanted him to. So, fellas, I'm going to tell you how I feel about the trade deadline. Overall, if you do not go out and get pieces of the puzzle that are going to push you over the top, if you're in contention, then it's worthless. Okay. I do think De La Cruz was a nice pickup. I do think that IKF was a really good pickup. Okay. But I just think that an organization like Pittsburgh, needs to have management, needs a manager, a coach who's going to come in that can handle the type of players they have currently. You don't need this green guy who doesn't adjust to what's going on based on experience. This guy's been a manager for 5 years. He has been a losing manager for 5 years. He's had 2 consecutive 100-loss seasons. So I know you wanted me to just go on a little tear there about the trade deadline, but overall, I think that their trade deadline had some prosperity to it because of the length of the deals that these guys still have. But on the other side of that coin, if you bring that same management team back to run the team, you're just going to get the same results every year.
Well, the only thing I can say about the Pirates is this time they didn't look like sellers anyways. It looked like, I mean, on the surface they didn't. So, all right, with that said, okay, Mark, have any parting shots?
I really, in terms of parting shots, I mean, I love to see what teams do down the stretch. But what I'm starting to feel is the teams that were strong just got stronger because they made moves. And some of these teams that were fringe teams that could have been a push on the wild card, they're just fading now, to be honest with you. I really see San Diego jumped up, Arizona jumped up into the wild card, and some of those other teams that, even though they made some fringe moves, they're not going to be there. It'll be interesting what happens in September, to be honest with you. This is going to be a good September in baseball, fellas.
Okay, George, do you have any parting shots?
Well, my parting shot is just going to be another shot at the Tigers. Of course, they were sellers, and the Flaherty, the starting pitcher, was the number one prime, pitcher for them to unload. I mean, they weren't going to get rid of Skubal, I don't think, for anything unless you gave them the house. If you had given them 3 or 4 prospects and 2 starters, whatever, that didn't happen, Skubal. But the Tigers, again, it's wait till next year. And listen, Barber, I feel your frustration. I know you're going through this kind of thing with the Pirates, and the Pirate fans are. We're facing a similar situation in Detroit. You're trying to see and get those pieces to the puzzle, like you guys were talking about. It's so hard to do that. Scott Harris has got an unbelievable, thankless kind of job to try to put this all together. They've been hit with a lot of injuries again this year, Detroit. But all that being said, they have maintained a good attendance this year at the games. I mean, they've had good crowds for most of the way. But again, the fans are getting a little bit tired waiting for next year. But here we go again in Detroit.
Yeah, the only thing I can say pertaining to the Pirates is they should never let Clint Hurdle go at all. He was the best thing they had going for him. You know what, Trent? Normally I'd give parting shots about what you think they should do in sports, but I'm not going to do it in your case. I'm going to take the parting shot segment and allow you to promote your book on a little bit more extensive level. How does that sound? Okay, fair enough. And then when you come back here in 2 weeks, I may still go back to that and let you promote your book, or I'll give you a little time to do both. But this time, since we're going to be talking about it again, folks, as I just mentioned a little while ago, Trent Clark and I are going to be working on No Filter Network, working on the Motor City Man Mouse show. There will be 2 Motor City Man Mouse shows. The one that Trent and I are going to work on, as well as one that I'm going to be doing on my own. But so I'm glad to welcome him as a co-host on that show. So Trent, why don't you go out there and try to let people know why they should buy your book?
Well, thank you, Motor City Madmouth. I appreciate that. This is the book, Leading Winning Teams. Certainly how teamwork, motivation, and strategy achieve big league success. My background of coaching in professional sports to entrepreneurship, I have always recognized the value of having a great coach and learning and the great values we learn from sports. And how many times athletes would come to me saying, I don't know if I have skills that are going to transfer now out into the real world of careers and business. And there's a ton of great skills, from how quick they hyper learn, adaptability, communication, teamwork. I mean, there's so many things from these athletes that actually transfer over very well, and they have tons of skills. And of course, if you don't go to a trade school or you don't go to a university, you feel like, hey, I'm kind of lost here without something that is really tangible for me to go out into a career. And I really wanted to dispel that myth. I've certainly taken a lot of the lessons I fortunately did go to university and learned a couple things along the way, but all the lessons came in from the people around me, the colleagues, the coaches. I've just worked with great coaches, from Sparky Anderson, of course, to Nick Saban, to Tom Izzo, to man, it just goes on from all the people I was around, from Shapiro to Sosha to, Joe Madden. It's just been an incredible run of learning and gleaning. And so I tell a lot of those stories in there. As far as for signing, anyone, you can get the book. You can get the book at any of the major retailers, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. They're all there. You can check out our page at bit.ly at Trent LWT, bit.ly/Trent LWT. That's our author page. You can find everything right there. It's also on Leadershipity on our website. For me on the close, I'll tell you this, that great talk tonight, man, some great stuff. I think this trade deadline, I think that too many teams are putting weighted all on the stats. They're not looking at the heart of these kids. They're not looking at a guy like Clint Hurdle, who knows these kids in and out. He knows what their competitive levels are. He knows what their grit levels are. I mean, there's just a lot more to be said than just the X's and O's. I think there are no championships won in August. I love the Padres. I don't know if they have the staff to really compete at that level. And flipping this all the way back around to our beginning story of the mercy rule, we can remember when the A's certainly storied very easily in Moneyball, when they set that record for the game winner in wins in a row in August. They were up 10-0 on that game, and then the Tampa Bay Devil Rays came back in that game. They ended up winning that game to get the record. But teams will come back. These are pros, man. They are competitive. They got a pride level. They're not going to give it up. But no championships are won in August. That A's was a very good club, and you run into a buzzsaw in that first round, and you lose a tight 3 out of 5 win, and you're gone. There's a lot of things that got to go right to win that big ring.
Well done. I appreciate that. That brings a lot in perspective to the mercy rule. All right. Well, with that said, Mark, why don't you let everybody know how they can get a hold of you?
They can reach me at Original Sports Podcast. We're on podpage.com, Original Sports Podcast with Mark Maraday, and we're on every social media place that you can go. Our show drops on Thursdays, most likely. Sometimes it's on Tuesdays. We go live on Tuesdays, but we like to drop the show on Thursday for the audio portion of it. And we are on Roku, and we just got a new slot on Roku because we're doing well. They moved us to the 7 o'clock slot on Tuesday night, so we will be live on Roku when we tape.
Hold on. Okay, George, go ahead.
Yeah, you can find me at the Motor City Tribune, which is one of the affiliates of the South Florida Tribune website. And I write about sports here in Detroit and in Michigan. At the end of my columns, there's always a link to my book, which is called Detroit Sports Broadcasters on the Air, which chronicles the history of Detroit and Michigan sportscasters, including Ernie Harwell and Ray Lane and Bud Lynch and Ken Cal, George Blaha. We have great guys in Detroit. And certainly it's a good book for anybody that's interested in that bit of history. Reach me at gicorn@yahoo.com and also at LinkedIn. And then you can find me under my name, obviously, at Facebook as well, or Sand G Sports 99. And there's my book. Yeah, there it is right in the corner there. Thank you, Candy, for posting that. Find me on 108 Stitches and Fire Up and all these great shows. Looking forward to the Sports Exchange always too on Wednesday night, Scott.
And of course, he's going to be with me on this week here doing a no filter. But what we're going to be doing with this particular episode is diving into my book a little bit and talk about some of the concepts that are written in there. And Trent will be on there regularly once a week, no matter what. There might be instances where you see him on twice a week on the network, but the no filter is something that we both have made a decision. We want to do what we can to build it. But let's face reality, Trent. We know that you like baseball, and we might even drag you on the hockey show once in a while as well. So what I have to do here is, I tell you what, I take a pride in making sure everybody that comes on this network is not a one-trick pony, okay? Everybody's going to do 2 or 3 shows, and after all, you got to be versatile, right?
Yep.
Does everybody remember the day when there used to be a 24-man roster because MLB tried to go ahead and cut corners and get rid of one spot? how long did that last? But then you had to have versatile players. Anyways, all the people on my team are versatile, and that's why I'm so proud and thrilled to have everybody that is on here. I'm proud of everyone. I'm only as good as the supporting cast that I have, and I am proud to say optimistically that I have the best supporting cast on the planet, and I'll take that to the bank, credit union, or whatever. So Trent, okay, you talked about the book. Is there any other way that people can contact you as well?
Yes, you can reach me on LinkedIn, Trent M. Clark. Email me, trent@leadershipity.com. That's leadershipity.com. You can pick up that book anywhere, sold in your store near you, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can find it. And thanks to all of you. Just a great time just being on with the three of you, and just a lot of fun talking 108 stitches.
Yeah, it won't be long. It won't be long before Trent gets us that link sent to southfloridatribune@gmail.com, and we'll put it on our website, right, Trent? You will do that, right?
For sure.
Okay, there you go. The thumbs up is good. The for sure is better. Candy, take it away before my voice goes deep someplace else where it's supposed to be. Go ahead, take it away.
You are listening to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. If you see the red subscribe button, hit it, like us, share us with all your friends and family. Monday nights, before this, we talked hockey. We talk baseball Monday nights. We talk football on Tuesday nights, Wednesday night, and Thursday nights. Sports Exchange and Fire Up. You never know what we're going to be talking about. We are sponsored by the South Florida Tribune Publishing Company, which published a book, Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. The foreword is written by none other than George Eichhorn. But the meat, the guts, the content came from none other than Scott, the Motor City Madmouth Morgenroth. It is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Apple, and Google Books. Get your copy today. I know you want to see what a young Muhammad Ali, and more importantly, what a young Scott Morgenroth looks like. Get your copy today. If you like listening to podcasts, you can listen to all of our podcasts are available. Apple, Google, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts. We do have a website, www.southfloridatribune, where you can read Scott, you can read George's articles, you can see pictures that I've taken. You can also see the link to our Scott's book and the link to our merchandise store, where you can get t-shirts, shorts, baseball caps, sweatshirts, and other South Florida Tribune or Motor City Madmouth paraphernalia and accessories. I think that's pretty much it. If you want to sponsor a show or advertise, call Scott, 954-304-4941. If you missed any of that, it's been scrolling along the bottom. So just hit pause, rewind, and watch it again, or listen to it again to get any of that information. You can email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. If you have show ideas or want to be a guest, let us know. At Tribune South, Twitter X. Okay, Scott, back to you to close us up.
All right, Candy. Well, you said everything, so I didn't have to say any more, except I want to thank everybody for joining us here on 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. So on behalf of George Eichhorn and the barber Mark Meriday, Original Sports Podcast, and my new co-host on Motor City Madmouth Show, who will be a versatile individual when I get through with them. Okay, baseball, hockey, etc., etc. I want to thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you next Tuesday on 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. Have a great week, everybody. See you next week. In fact, not only that, so I hope you can join us tomorrow for Inside the Pigskin. We'll have a good crew here, talk about the doings in the National Football League and maybe a college topic. We'll see what I come up with. Good night, everybody.